The first raindrops hit the window pane like tiny accusations, each one a reminder of the secrets I was desperately trying to hide. My small apartment, tucked away in the forgotten corner of the city, had always been my sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a prison of my own making, walls closing in with each passing moment, as I folded the tiny blue onesie and placed it in the bottom drawer beneath layers of my own clothes. My fingers lingered on the soft fabric, remembering, a luxury I couldn't afford most nights. "Mommy will be back soon, baby," I whispered to the framed photo on my nightstand, the only visible evidence of Liam's existence in this room. My beautiful boy with his father's eyes, currently sleeping peacefully at my sister's house across town. It had been our arrangement for 6 months now. Liam stayed with her during my night shifts at the Pearl, the city's most exclusive restaurant, the one place that paid enough to keep us afloat. The one place that had brought him into my life. I applied another coat of mascara, hands trembling slightly as I prepared for my shift. The reflection staring back showed a woman I barely recognized anymore. Hollow cheeks despite careful makeup, dark circles camouflaged beneath concealer, eyes that held too many secrets. At 24, I looked 10 years older, worn down by single motherhood and endless double shifts. The clock on my bedside table showed 5:47 p.m. 13 minutes to catch the bus that would take me downtown. 13 minutes to lock away any evidence of Liam's existence in this apartment. 13 minutes before I stepped back into the lie I'd been living for 3 months now. The lie that had kept us safe. The lie that had put food on our table. The lie that would destroy everything if he ever discovered the truth. With practiced movements, I checked Liam's drawer once more, making sure nothing was visible. I swept my gaze across the apartment. No toys in sight, no baby bottles, no telltale signs of the life I was hiding. The only thing I couldn't bring myself to hide was that single photo, but from its angle on the nightstand, it only showed Liam's face, not his age. Anyone seeing it might assume he was a younger brother or a nephew. That's what I'd let him believe after all. I grabbed my coat and purse, locking the door behind me as I stepped into the drizzling evening. The cold air bit at my exposed skin, but I welcomed the sting. It kept me alert, focused, reminded me what was at stake. The bus ride downtown passed in a blur of neon-lit streets and faceless passengers. My mind wandered to the events that had brought me here, to this precarious balance between survival and catastrophe. It had started innocently enough, a new job at an upscale restaurant after months of desperate searching. The Pearl catered to the elite of the city, politicians, celebrities, and others whose wealth demanded discretion and excellence. The pay was better than anything I could have hoped for, enough to finally start saving for Liam's future after his father disappeared with our meager savings, leaving nothing but mounting bills and a 3-month-old baby. Then came that fateful night 3 months ago when he first walked in. I recognized him immediately, of course. Everyone in the city knew Dominic Vega, even if they pretended not to. His name was whispered with equal parts fear and fascination. The restaurant fell silent as he entered, flanked by 2 men whose tailored suits couldn't quite hide the bulges of their weapons. I watched from behind the bar as the manager personally escorted them to the private dining area, his usual composure cracking under the weight of Vega's presence. I was assigned to their table that night. A coincidence that would alter the course of my life. "Just the specials, and the 82 Bordeaux," he had said without looking up from his phone, voice low and measured. I remembered the slight accent that colored his words, how his fingers moved across the screen with precise, controlled movements. I had nodded, turning to leave, when his hand caught my wrist. "Your name?" he said, finally looking up. I froze, feeling the eyes of his companions on me, assessing, calculating. "Emma," I had whispered, the lie slipping out before I could think. My real name, Sophia, suddenly seemed too personal to share with him. "Emma," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. His eyes, dark and penetrating, held mine for a beat too long. "Bring another glass." That was the beginning. I didn't know then that I'd just stepped into quicksand, that every move thereafter would only pull me deeper. The bus jolted to a stop, pulling me back to the present. The Pearl's elegant facade loomed ahead, its entrance already busy with valets parking luxury cars. I straightened my uniform, took a deep breath, and stepped off the bus, mentally transforming into Emma. The efficient, invisible waitress with no complications, no child, no past worth mentioning. "You're cutting it close," Mark, the bartender, remarked as I hurried through the staff entrance. "Bus was late," I muttered, stashing my purse in my locker. "He's here already," Mark said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Private room. Asked for you specifically." My stomach twisted into a knot. In 3 months, this had become routine. Dominic Vega came to the Pearl twice a week, always requested the same private dining room, always asked for me to serve him. At first, it was terrifying. Then, as weeks passed and the generous tips helped pay for Liam's daycare and new clothes, it became merely nerve-wracking. Lately, it had evolved into something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something that made my pulse quicken in ways I couldn't entirely attribute to fear. "Thanks," I said to Mark, checking my appearance one last time in the small mirror inside my locker. "Anyone with him?" "Just Russo. Looks like a business dinner." I nodded, grateful for the information. Anton Russo was Vega's right-hand man, less intimidating than some of his other associates. I could handle this. The private dining room was dimly lit, as always. Dominic sat with his back to the wall, facing the door, a habit I'd noticed from the beginning. Russo occupied the chair to his right, several folders spread between them. They both looked up as I entered, and Russo immediately gathered the papers, a practiced movement that spoke of years of caution. "Emma," Dominic said, his deep voice sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. Right on time. He wasn't the monster the newspapers painted him to be, at least not in appearance, in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair cropped short, and a physique that spoke of disciplined exercise rather than intimidating bulk. His features were sharp, aristocratic almost, with eyes that missed nothing. He wore his power like a second skin, never flaunting it, never needing to. "Good evening, Mr. Vega," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "The usual?" Something flickered in his eyes, amusement perhaps. "You know me too well already." I didn't respond to that, turning instead to Russo to take his order. As I wrote down their selections, I felt Dominic's gaze on me, studying, assessing. It should have made me uncomfortable. It did, but not entirely in the way it should. "You look tired," he observed as I collected their menus. "I'm fine," I answered automatically. "That wasn't a question, Emma." I met his eyes then, finding them softer than expected. "Late night," I offered, the partial truth easier than a complete lie. He nodded slowly. "The storm kept you up?" For a moment, I was confused, then remembered the thunderstorm that had rolled through the city the previous night. In reality, it was Liam's teething pain that had kept me awake, walking the floors of my sister's apartment until dawn, singing softly to my whimpering son. "Yes," I lied. "The thunder." His expression suggested he didn't quite believe me, but he let it go, turning back to Russo and their interrupted conversation. I escaped to the kitchen, releasing the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The evening progressed with the usual choreography. I brought their drinks, then appetizers, then main courses. I appeared when needed and vanished when they spoke in hushed tones. I had learned the rhythm of these dinners, the careful dance of presence and absence. Tonight, however, something felt different. The air seemed charged with an unfamiliar tension, and more than once I caught Dominic watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. It was nearly 11 when they finally finished their meal. Russo excused himself for a phone call, leaving me alone with Dominic as I cleared the table. "How long have you worked here, Emma?" he asked suddenly. "Almost 4 months," I answered, keeping my movements smooth and efficient. "And before that?" I hesitated, carefully constructing my response. "Various places. Nothing worth mentioning." "Everyone has a story worth mentioning," he countered, leaning back in his chair, swirling the remnants of wine in his glass. "You're not from here originally," it wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "No, I moved here about a year ago. That much was true. Running to something or away from something." His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp, observant. "Just looking for opportunities," I replied, the practiced line rolling off my tongue easily. He smiled then, a rare sight that transformed his face, softening the hard edges. You're a terrible liar, Emma. My hands froze on the plates I was stacking. I'm not lying. Your eyes give you away. They dart to the left when you're not telling the truth. He set his glass down carefully. It's a common tell. Fear spread through my chest, cold and paralyzing. I should get these to the kitchen, I said, lifting the stack of plates. I've made you uncomfortable, he stated, not sounding particularly concerned about it. That wasn't my intention. I forced a smile. It's fine, Mr. Vega. Dominic, he corrected. Not for the first time. Dominic, I conceded, knowing it was easier than refusing. He studied me for a moment longer, then reached into his jacket pocket, extracting an envelope which he placed on the table. For your trouble. I knew what it contained. The tips he left were always the same. $500 in cash, far more than any reasonable percentage of the bill. The first time I'd tried to refuse. His expression had made it clear refusal wasn't an option. Thank you, I said quietly, taking the envelope and tucking it into my apron pocket. He stood then, buttoning his suit jacket with a practiced motion. It's still raining. Do you have a ride home? I'll catch the bus, I said, stepping back instinctively. At this hour? In this weather? He shook his head. I'll have Anton drop you. That's not necessary. It wasn't an offer, Emma, and just like that, the momentary softness vanished, replaced by the steel core I knew lay beneath the surface. This was the man people whispered about. The man whose name alone could open doors or seal them shut permanently. Thank you, I said again, knowing when to yield. 40 minutes later, I sat in the back of a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, Russo at the wheel and rain pelting the roof in a steady rhythm. I had given him my sister's address, not my own, a precaution I always took when Dominic insisted on these rides. I would wait until they drove away, then walk the 15 blocks to my actual apartment. A small inconvenience for keeping my real life separate. He likes you, Russo said suddenly, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I remained silent, watching raindrops race down the window. That's not a common occurrence, Russo continued. The boss doesn't notice many people. I'm just his waitress, I said softly. Russo chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. Sure. And I'm just his driver. We lapsed into silence for the remainder of the journey. When the car pulled up outside my sister's apartment building, I thanked him and quickly stepped out into the rain. I stood under the awning, watching the SUV disappear around the corner before starting my long walk home, the envelope of cash heavy in my pocket. By the time I reached my apartment, it was past midnight. My clothes were damp despite the umbrella I'd brought, and exhaustion weighed on me like a physical burden. All I wanted was to call my sister, check on Liam, and fall into dreamless sleep. I unlocked my door, flicked on the light, and froze. The air in my apartment felt different, disturbed somehow. My eyes darted around the small living room, noting everything in its place. Yet something was wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I cautiously moved forward. Purse clutched tightly as if it could offer some protection. Then I saw it. On my coffee table, placed with deliberate care, sat a pair of tiny blue shoes. Liam's shoes. The ones I'd bought him just last week. That should have been safely at my sister's house. And beside them, a folded note with handwriting I recognized immediately from the generous tips he left. We need to talk, Sophia. My legs gave out beneath me. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at those innocent blue shoes that now represented my worst nightmare. How had he found out? My mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Had he been watching me all this time? Following me to my sister's? Had someone at the restaurant recognized me and told him my real name? The note sat there, mocking me with its elegant script. We need to talk, Sophia. Not Emma. Sophia. My real name looked foreign on that paper. Dangerous. With trembling fingers, I reached for my phone and called my sister. Soph? Jenny's sleep-laden voice answered after 3 rings. What's wrong? Is Liam okay? I asked, unable to keep the panic from my voice. He's fine. Sound asleep. Her tone shifted, now alert with concern. What's going on? Are his blue shoes there? The new ones? A pause. Let me check. I heard rustling, then her footsteps padding across her apartment. That's weird. I could have sworn they were in his bag, but I don't see them. Did you take them home to wash? Jenny, listen to me. I cut her off, lowering my voice, though I knew I was alone. If anyone comes to your door tonight, don't answer it. Don't let anyone near Liam. I'm coming over now. Sophia, you're scaring me. What's happening? I'll explain when I get there. Just, please, watch him like a hawk. I hung up, grabbed my still damp coat, and headed for the door. Then stopped. If Dominic had found my apartment, had been inside it, he might be watching it now. Going straight to Jenny's might lead him directly to Liam. My hand hovered over the doorknob as indecision paralyzed me. The note hadn't sounded immediately threatening. We need to talk. Not, I'm coming for you, or you'll pay for this. Just talk. Could I risk waiting until morning? Could I risk not running to protect my son this very minute? A soft knock at the door made the decision for me. 3 precise taps that sent my heart racing. I backed away, eyes darting around for anything I could use as a weapon. The knock came again, slightly louder. I know you're in there, Sophia, his voice, unmistakable even through the door. Open up, or I'll have Anton do it for me. My options had evaporated, with one last desperate look at my phone, considering whether to call the police. Though what good would that do against someone like Dominic Vega? I unlocked the door and opened it just enough to see him. He stood alone in the hallway, no sign of Russo or other guards. His suit was impeccable despite the late hour. Not a drop of rain on him, though it still poured outside. His expression gave nothing away, eyes dark and unreadable as they locked with mine. May I come in? He asked, the politeness somehow more frightening than any threat. I stepped back wordlessly, allowing him to enter. He moved with that same contained grace I'd observed for months, taking in my small apartment with one sweeping glance before turning back to me. You've been lying to me for quite some time, Sophia Martin, he said, using my full name, confirming he knew exactly who I was. How did you find out? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. That's your first question? One eyebrow raised slightly. Not why I'm here or what I intend to do. I swallowed hard. Those questions seemed obvious. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. I've had you investigated since the first night you served me, he said matter-of-factly. Standard procedure for anyone who comes into my regular orbit. I knew your real name within 24 hours. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You knew? All this time? He moved to the couch and sat down, gesturing for me to do the same. When I remained standing, frozen in place, he sighed. I'm not here to harm you or your son, Sophia. If that was my intention, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The mention of Liam sent a fresh wave of fear through me. Leave him out of this. Whatever issue you have with me, sit down. He interrupted, his tone making it clear it wasn't a suggestion. I perched on the edge of the armchair opposite him, as far away as possible while still following his command. Your son is 18 months old, he continued, glancing at the tiny shoes still sitting on my coffee table. Born to you and Michael Reeves, who abandoned you both when the child was 3 months old, after emptying your joint bank account of $8,000. Hearing my life narrated back to me with such clinical precision made my blood run cold. What do you want from me? Dominic leaned forward slightly. The truth would be a start. Why the elaborate deception? The fake name? Hiding your child? The lies about where you live? Because people like you are dangerous, I blurted out, immediately regretting my honesty when his expression darkened. People like me, he repeated slowly. I needed the job at the Pearl, I continued, figuring honesty was my only play now. It pays enough for us to survive, to save a little. When you started asking for me specifically, leaving those tips, I couldn't risk losing that income. And I couldn't risk you knowing about Liam. Because you think I'd use him against you somehow. Wouldn't you? I challenged, a flicker of defiance breaking through my fear. He studied me for a long moment. You're a mother protecting her child. I respect that, even if your methods were misguided. Misguided? I repeated, incredulous. You break into my apartment, steal my son's shoes, terrify me half to death, and I'm the misguided one? A faint smile touched his lips. I didn't break in. Your landlord was quite accommodating when I expressed interest in the building. That doesn't make it better. No, he conceded. but it makes it legal. We sat in tense silence for several beats before he spoke again. The reason I'm here, Sophia, is that I don't appreciate being lied to. Not by anyone, and especially not by someone He paused, seeming to search for the right word, taken an interest in. The implication in those words sent a shiver down my spine that wasn't entirely from fear. Your interest in me is exactly what I was afraid of, I admitted quietly. He nodded, accepting this. Yet you continued to serve me, to accept my generosity, to get into cars with my men. If you were truly afraid, there were other options. When you're a single mother with no support system except a sister who can barely pay her own bills, there aren't as many options as you might think, I countered. Something shifted in his expression then. A softening around the eyes. Tell me about your son. The request caught me off guard. Why? Humor me. I took a deep breath, trying to gauge his intentions. Finding no immediate threat, I reached for the framed photo on the side table and handed it to him. His name is Liam. He started walking at 10 months. He loves animals, especially dogs. And he has this laugh that can light up the whole room. Despite myself, a smile formed as I spoke of my son. He's the reason I do everything. The only thing that matters. Dominic looked at the photograph, his expression unreadable. He has your eyes, he observed, handing it back to me. And his father? Out of the picture completely. Hasn't tried to contact us once since he left. Perhaps that's for the best. I set the photo down. What happens now? I asked. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Dominic stood, buttoning his jacket. Now, you have a choice to make. What kind of choice? You can continue working at the Pearl under your real name, without the elaborate deceptions. I'll arrange for your salary to be doubled. He paused, gauging my reaction. Or you can walk away entirely. I'll ensure you receive a year's salary as severance, enough to find other arrangements. I stared at him, waiting for the catch. Why would you do either of those things? Because capable people are rare, and you've proven yourself to be both capable and resilient, despite your creative approach to employment. He moved toward the door, then stopped. You have until tomorrow evening to decide. And if I choose neither? His gaze hardened slightly. Don't make this difficult, Sophia. I'm offering you a clean resolution to a situation that could be handled very differently. The threat, though veiled, was unmistakable. What about Liam? I pressed. Is he part of this arrangement too? Your son remains your concern, not mine, though I would suggest better childcare arrangements than leaving him with your sister while she works her own night shifts. My blood froze. He knew about Jenny's job too. One last thing, he added, hand on the doorknob. The shoes were merely a message, a way to cut through your deceptions. But know this, if I had wanted to, I could have taken far more than shoes. Remember that before you consider lying to me again. With that, he left, the door closing softly behind him. Only then did I realize I'd been holding my breath. I sank to the floor, adrenaline draining away and leaving me shaking. The implications of everything he'd said whirled through my mind. He'd known who I was all along. He'd been watching not just me, but Jenny and Liam too. And now he was offering me money, more money than I'd ever had, with conditions I didn't fully understand. Because capable people are rare. What did that even mean? What did he really want from me? I reached for my phone and called Jenny again. He was here, I said when she answered. He knows everything. Oh God, Soph. What are we going to do? I looked at the tiny blue shoes still sitting on my coffee table. I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do. Should I take Liam somewhere? My friend in Chicago has been asking us to visit. No, I interrupted, suddenly certain. No running. That would only make things worse. I took a deep breath. For now, just keep him close. I'll come over in the morning. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at those innocent blue shoes that had changed everything. The strangest part was that beneath the fear and uncertainty, another emotion had surfaced during my conversation with Dominic, a bizarre sense of relief. The exhausting web of lies I'd been maintaining had collapsed, and in its ruins lay possibilities I hadn't considered before. Dangerous possibilities, perhaps, but possibilities nonetheless. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Dominic's visit in my mind, analyzing every word, every subtle shift in his expression. By the time dawn broke, painting my small bedroom with soft gray light, I'd made my decision. I would accept his first offer, continuing at the Pearl with double the salary. Not because I trusted him, but because it kept me in his sight. An old saying echoed in my mind, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Though I wasn't sure which category Dominic fell into anymore, the morning crawled by as I waited for a reasonable hour to visit Jenny and Liam. At 7, I couldn't wait any longer. I threw on jeans and a sweater, grabbed my purse, and headed out. Jenny lived in a slightly better neighborhood than mine, a garden apartment with actual green space where Liam could play. I knocked softly, knowing they might still be asleep. Jenny opened the door looking as exhausted as I felt, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd had as little sleep as I had. You look terrible, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. So do you, I replied, managing a weak smile as I stepped inside. Liam was awake, playing with blocks on the living room floor. At the sight of me, his face lit up with that pure, uncomplicated joy that only toddlers seem capable of. Mama, he squealed, abandoning his towers to toddle toward me. I scooped him up, breathing in his clean baby scent, feeling his small arms wrap around my neck. In that moment, the fears of the night before receded slightly. This was what mattered. This was what I would protect at any cost. I made coffee, Jenny said, leading me to the kitchen while I carried Liam on my hip, strong enough to wake the dead, which is what we both look like. Over steaming mugs, with Liam happily returned to his blocks within sight, I told Jenny everything. Dominic's visit, his offers, the fact that he'd been watching us all along. Jesus, Soph, she whispered, hands wrapped tightly around her mug. This is some serious mafia movie stuff. What are you going to do? Accept his offer to keep working at the Pearl, I said. The double salary would mean I could finally get us a better place, maybe even in this neighborhood, and I could put more aside for Liam's future. Jenny's brow furrowed. But at what cost? This guy clearly has some kind of interest in you. And he's dangerous, Soph. The kind of dangerous that gets people hurt. I know. I watched Liam stack one block precariously atop another, his little face scrunched in concentration. But running isn't an option. He'd find us. And refusing his offer directly might be even more dangerous. So what? You just dance to his tune now? For the moment. I met her worried gaze steadily. Until I figure out what he really wants and how to navigate this safely for all of us. Jenny reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Whatever you decide, we're in this together. You know that, right? I nodded, grateful beyond words for her unwavering support. We'd been each other's only real family since our parents died in a car accident 6 years ago. Jenny was the reason I'd moved to this city in the first place, after Michael disappeared with our money. There's something else, I said after a moment. Something I didn't mention. Jenny raised an eyebrow. When Dominic was in my apartment, when we were talking, there was this moment. I struggled to articulate the confusing swirl of emotions I'd experienced. It wasn't just fear I was feeling. Understanding dawned on Jenny's face. Oh, Soph, no. Tell me you're not attracted to this guy. I didn't say that, I protested, though the heat in my cheeks betrayed me. You didn't have to. She sighed deeply. Of all the complicated situations you could get yourself into. It doesn't matter, I said firmly. I'm not going to act on it. I'm just acknowledging it exists so I can be careful. Jenny's expression softened. Just promise me you'll be smart about this. Liam needs you. I need you. I promise, I said, looking over at my son, now attempting to climb inside his toy box. He comes first. Always. Later that afternoon, after spending precious hours playing with Liam, reading him stories, and memorizing every giggle and new word, I reluctantly prepared to leave for my shift at the Pearl. Jenny had agreed to keep Liam overnight again, despite her own exhaustion. Call me after your shift, she insisted as I kissed Liam goodbye, trying to ignore his little hands clutching at my sweater. I don't care what time it is. I need to know you're okay. I will, I promised, gently disentangling myself from Liam's grip. Be good for Auntie Jenny, baby. His lower lip trembled as I moved toward the door. "Mama stay?" he asked, eyes wide and pleading. Every time I left him, it felt like my heart was being torn from my chest. "Mama will be back soon," I assured him, forcing a bright smile. "We'll play with the trucks tomorrow, okay?" His nod was solemn, trusting. I turned away quickly so he wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. The Pearl was unusually busy for a weeknight. I slipped in through the staff entrance, changed into my uniform, and found Mark at the bar. "Busy night?" I asked, tying my apron. "Some big political fundraiser in the main room," he replied, mixing a complex cocktail with practiced efficiency. "Oh, and your regular is in the private dining room. Asked for you specifically, as usual." My pulse quickened. I'd known Dominic would be here. He always came on Tuesdays, but facing him after last night's revelations felt different, more dangerous somehow. "Just him?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Mark nodded. "Came in alone about 20 minutes ago. Seemed in a good mood, if that helps." It didn't, particularly, but I thanked him and made my way to the private dining room, steeling myself for whatever awaited me. Dominic was seated in his usual spot, reading something on his phone. He looked up as I entered, his dark eyes immediately finding mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Good evening," I finally said, decidedly using neither his name nor any title. "Sophia," he replied, setting his phone aside. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd decided to take the severance option after all. I'm here, aren't I?" A slight smile touched his lips. "So you are." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, we have things to discuss." I hesitated, then took the seat, acutely aware that this wasn't part of my normal serving routine. "I have other tables," I said, the lie obvious to both of us on this particular night. "No, you don't," he countered smoothly. "I've arranged for you to be exclusively assigned to this room tonight." Of course he had. "Fine. What did you want to discuss?" "Your decision," he said simply. "Have you made one?" I met his gaze directly. "I'll continue working here if the salary increase you mentioned is genuine." Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "It is. Your new compensation begins today." He reached inside his jacket and produced an envelope, sliding it across the table. A signing bonus, you might say. I didn't touch it. "What exactly am I signing up for, Mr. Vega? Because I get the feeling there's more to this arrangement than just waiting tables." He leaned back, studying me with interest. "Smart," he murmured, almost to himself. "Yes, there is more. I have use for someone with your particular qualities." "And what qualities are those?" I asked warily. "Observant, discreet, capable of maintaining a facade under pressure." His gaze was appraising, clinical almost. "You've managed to deceive me, partially at least, for months. That's no small feat." A chill ran through me. "You want me to spy on people? Nothing so dramatic," he replied, though his slight smile suggested I wasn't entirely wrong. "Consider it an expansion of your current role. You'll continue serving in this room, but only to certain guests, my associates and business partners. You'll be present for conversations, privy to information most aren't." "And you expect me to report back to you? About what, exactly?" "Impressions, reactions, the things people reveal when they think service staff are invisible." He shrugged slightly. "You've been doing it unconsciously already. I'm simply asking you to be more deliberate." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to betray your associates' confidences? Become some kind of informant?" "I want you to be my eyes and ears when I'm not present," he corrected. "In my line of work, loyalty is rare and valuable. I reward it accordingly." The envelope still sat untouched between us. "And if I refuse, then you take the severance and find employment elsewhere," he said, his tone hardening slightly. "But understand this. The protection my interest in you provides would end. You and your son would be on your own." The threat, though implicit, was unmistakable. "That sounds like coercion. I prefer to think of it as clarity." He pushed the envelope closer to me. $10,000. A new beginning, whether you stay or go. My hand hovered over the envelope. This was blood money, no matter how he dressed it up. But it was also Liam's security, a chance at a better life for him. "I need to know one thing," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Why me?" You must have dozens of people who could do this job more effectively. Dominic regarded me for a long moment. Because you have something to protect, he finally said. That makes you both vulnerable and formidable. A useful combination. And that's it? No other reason? Something shifted in his expression. A subtle change I couldn't quite read. Would you prefer there was? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. No, I said finally, taking the envelope and slipping it into my apron pocket. This arrangement is complicated enough already. He nodded once, accepting my answer. We understand each other then, but we didn't. Not really. There were currents beneath the surface of this interaction that remained murky, dangerous, yet I'd made my choice, stepped into this new reality with eyes wide open. I should get you your usual, I said, standing and slipping back into the role of waitress. It felt safer somehow, more familiar territory. Not tonight, he said, rising as well. Tonight we're celebrating our new arrangement. Bring the 82 Bordeaux and 2 glasses. I can't drink on the job, I protested. You can tonight, he countered, with that quiet authority that brooked no argument. Consider it your first official act in your expanded role. As I left to retrieve the wine, I felt the weight of the envelope in my pocket, heavy with promise and threat in equal measure. I'd entered a new world, one where the rules were different, the stakes higher. For Liam's sake, I would navigate it as best I could. But a small voice in the back of my mind wondered if I'd just made a deal with the devil, and what it would ultimately cost me. 3 weeks passed in a strange new reality. True to his word, my salary doubled, paid weekly in cash-filled envelopes that I immediately deposited into a new savings account. The signing bonus went toward a security deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in Jenny's building, a miracle of availability that I suspected wasn't coincidental. The move happened quickly. One day I mentioned to Dominic that I'd found a place. The next day a moving company appeared at my door, efficiently packing and transporting my meager belongings to the new apartment. By nightfall, Liam and I were settled in our new home, complete with furniture I hadn't selected but couldn't have afforded anyway. Is it weird that I feel like Cinderella? Jenny asked, sprawled on my new sofa as we shared a bottle of wine after Liam's bedtime. Except, instead of a fairy godmother, you've got a mafia godfather. I shot her a warning look. Don't call him that. And yes, it's weird. All of this is weird. But you have to admit, Soph, this place is amazing. She gestured around the spacious living room with its hardwood floors and large windows. And being neighbors? That's the best part. It was true. Having Jenny just down the hall meant Liam could stay in his own bedroom when I worked nights, with Jenny checking on him via the baby monitor. It was the first time since his birth that I felt he was truly secure. I know, I admitted. I just wish it didn't come with so many strings attached. The expanded role Dominic had mentioned was evolving in ways I hadn't anticipated. Twice a week, I served private dinners at the Pearl, eavesdropping on conversations between Dominic and various associates, politicians, businessmen, other figures whose influence I could only guess at. I observed as instructed, noting reactions, tensions, anything that seemed significant. Afterward, Dominic and I would share a glass of wine, and he would ask questions. Who seemed nervous? Who checked their phone too often? Who couldn't meet his eyes? I answered truthfully, sharing impressions that seemed trivial but which he valued highly. It should have felt wrong, this betrayal of confidences. Instead, it became almost a game, sharpening my observational skills, teaching me to read micro-expressions and body language with increasing accuracy. And Dominic? Dominic was changing too, or perhaps just revealing more of himself. Our late-night conversations expanded beyond business to literature, art, philosophy. He had a mind like a steel trap, quoting Dostoevsky and Sun Tzu with equal facility. He asked about Liam sometimes, listened with genuine interest to stories of my son's latest accomplishments. You've never asked about his father, I said one night, the wine making me bolder than usual. We were alone in the private dining room. The restaurant closed around us. The hour approaching midnight, Dominic swirled his wine thoughtfully. Would you want to talk about him? Not particularly. Then why bring him up? I shrugged. Most people are curious. They want the whole sad story. Naive girl trusts wrong guy. gets abandoned with a baby. I'm not most people, he replied simply. And I suspect there's more to your story than naive girl meets villain. He wasn't wrong. Michael wasn't a villain exactly, I admitted. Just weak, selfish. When things got hard, he ran. His loss, Dominic said, his dark eyes holding mine for a beat longer than necessary. Some men don't recognize value when it's right in front of them. The compliment, if that's what it was, lingered between us, shifting the atmosphere in subtle ways I wasn't ready to acknowledge. It's late, I said, standing abruptly. I should get home to Liam. Dominic nodded, rising as well. Anton will drive you. It wasn't a question, and I'd stopped pretending I would take the bus. Russo was waiting outside as always, silent and watchful as he held the car door for me. That night, as I lay in bed, unable to sleep, I admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding for weeks. My feelings for Dominic Vega were evolving into something dangerous, something far beyond professional respect or even gratitude. There was an attraction there, powerful and undeniable, made more potent by the fact that I sensed he felt it too. But what kind of mother would that make me? To be drawn to a man like him? What example would I be setting for Liam? The questions haunted me into the dawn, unanswerable and relentless. The next evening, I arrived at the Pearl to find the private dining room occupied not by Dominic, but by a woman I'd never seen before. Tall and elegantly dressed, with the kind of beauty that seemed effortless, she looked up as I entered. "You must be Sophia," she said, her accent similar to Dominic's but lighter, more musical. "My brother has told me about you." Brother. I tried to hide my surprise. In all our conversations, Dominic had never mentioned family. "I'm Elena," she continued, gesturing for me to sit. "Dominic sends his apologies. He was detained. He asked me to brief you on tonight's guests." I remained standing, uncertain. "I should check with whom?" She interrupted, one perfectly shaped eyebrow arching. "The manager? He works for us. Dominic, he sent me." "Please, sit. We have much to discuss and little time." Reluctantly, I took the offered seat. Elena studied me with the same penetrating gaze Dominic possessed, as if cataloging every detail for future reference. "You're not what I expected," she finally said. "What did you expect?" A slight smile curved her lips. "Not someone who would question me, for one. My brother's interests usually run to more compliant women." The implication stung, though I kept my expression neutral. "I'm an employee, not an interest." Elena's laugh was soft, but genuine. "If you were merely an employee, I wouldn't be here." She leaned forward slightly. "Dominic doesn't mix business and pleasure often. When he does, I take notice. There's nothing. Save the denials." She cut me off smoothly. "I don't care what is or isn't happening between you and my brother. I care only about his protection." Her directness was disarming. "Protection from what?" "From himself, primarily," she sighed, a weary sound that suggested old worries. "Dominic has a weakness for strays, for broken things he thinks he can fix or protect. It's his one vulnerability." "I'm not broken," I said sharply, "and I don't need fixing." Elena regarded me thoughtfully. "Perhaps not. But you do need protection, you and your son. And Dominic has decided to provide it." She paused. "Do you understand what that means in our world?" I wasn't sure I did, not fully. "Why don't you tell me?" "It means you've been marked as his, whether you acknowledge it or not. It means enemies who might wish to hurt him now have a clear path to do so, through you." A chill ran through me. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you," she corrected. "There are people who would use your son as leverage without hesitation. People who have waited years for Dominic to reveal any weakness." The thought of Liam in danger made my blood run cold. "Why are you telling me this?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "Because you deserve to know the full implications of the path you're on. My brother..." She hesitated. "Dominic doesn't do things by half measures. If he's brought you into his circle, it's because he intends to keep you there." Before I could respond, the door opened and Dominic himself entered. He paused, taking in the scene before him with narrowed eyes. Elena, he said, his voice carefully controlled. This is unexpected. Is it? She replied, standing gracefully. You've been avoiding my calls. What choice did I have? A silent communication seemed to pass between them, loaded with unspoken history. Finally, Dominic turned to me. I apologize for my sister's intrusion. You're free to go home if you wish. It was the first time he'd ever offered me a choice about my presence. You said there were guests tonight, I said, uncertain. Plans change, he replied. Elena and I have matters to discuss. Elena smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Don't leave on my account, Sophia. I've said what I came to say. She moved toward the door, pausing to kiss Dominic's cheek. Remember what happened last time, brother, she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. Be careful. With that enigmatic warning, she left, leaving a charged silence in her wake. Dominic's jaw was tight, a muscle working beneath the skin. What did she tell you? That I'm a vulnerability, I answered honestly. That being associated with you puts Liam in danger. He cursed softly in what sounded like Italian. Elena sees threats everywhere. It's how she survived. Is she wrong? He moved to the bar cart in the corner, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey instead of our usual wine. Not entirely, he admitted, handing me one. There are risks. I've taken precautions. Well, what kind of precautions? I asked, the whiskey burning a path down my throat. The kind you don't need to know about. He sat across from me, his expression grave. What matters is that you and Liam are protected. I give you my word on that. Your word, I repeated. The word of a man who's built an empire on activities I can only guess at. Something flashed in his eyes, anger, perhaps, or hurt. Do you think I would let any harm come to you or your son, after everything? I don't know, I admitted. That's the problem. I don't really know you at all, do I? 3 months of serving you dinner, 3 weeks of whatever this arrangement is. It's nothing. A glimpse. Not understanding. He was silent for a long moment, considering. What do you want to know? The question caught me off guard. What? Ask me anything. I'll answer truthfully. His gaze was steady, challenging. If you're risking your safety and your son's for me, you deserve that much. It was an unprecedented offer, one that made my heart race with both opportunity and trepidation. What did I want to know about Dominic Vega? Everything. Nothing. The contradictions within me were dizzying. Why me? I finally asked, the question that had haunted me for weeks. Out of all the people you could bring into your confidence, why choose a single mother with everything to lose? Dominic set his glass down carefully. Because from the first night you served me, I saw someone extraordinary pretending to be ordinary. He leaned forward slightly. You wear your exhaustion and fear like armor, yet beneath it there's a strength few possess. You've been beaten down, but never broken. His words stirred something within me. A recognition I wasn't prepared for. And, he continued, his voice dropping slightly, because when you look at me, you see the man, not the monster everyone else fears. The admission hung between us, raw and honest in a way I hadn't expected. Without thinking, I reached across the table, my fingers brushing his. I see both, I whispered. That's what terrifies me. His hand turned, capturing mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The simple touch sent electricity up my arm, a current I couldn't ignore any longer. Come work for me directly, he said suddenly. Not just these nights at the Pearl, full-time as my personal assistant. Triple your current salary, regular hours, benefits. What? I pulled my hand away, startled. Why would you? Because I want you close, he interrupted, his gaze intense. Because I'm tired of pretending this is just business. Because your insights are valuable to me beyond these dinner observations. My mind raced with implications. What about Liam? He'd be provided for. The best childcare, education, anything he needs. It was too much. Too fast. I need time to think. Dominic nodded, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood, buttoning his jacket. But Sophia, Elena wasn't entirely wrong. Being in my orbit comes with risks. The question is whether you believe the protection I offer outweighs them. As Anton drove me home that night, my thoughts were a tangled mess of warnings and possibilities. Dominic's offer represented security for Liam beyond anything I could provide on my own. But at what cost? And could I trust his promise of protection? Or was I naively stepping deeper into a world I didn't understand? More troubling still was the realization that my decision might not be based entirely on practical considerations. The way my body responded to his touch, the connection I felt when our conversations stretched into the night, these weren't things I could simply dismiss. I was falling for Dominic Vega, despite knowing better. Despite Elena's warnings, despite everything. And that, more than anything, terrified me to my core. Block 5. The decision consumed my thoughts for days. I went through the motions of my life, caring for Liam, working my regular shifts at the Pearl, even serving Dominic during his usual Tuesday dinner. But my mind was elsewhere, weighing options, imagining futures. I avoided giving Dominic an answer, and to his credit, he didn't press. Our interactions remained professional, though the undercurrent of tension between us was palpable. His eyes followed me as I moved around the private dining room, his fingers lingering when I handed him a glass. Small moments of contact that left me breathless. A week after his offer, I was in the park with Liam, watching him navigate the playground with the determined concentration only toddlers possess. Jenny sat beside me on the bench, having joined us on her day off. "You're a million miles away," she observed, nudging my shoulder. "Thinking about him again?" I nodded, unable to deny it. "I don't know what to do, Jenny. His offer it would change everything for us." "But," she prompted, knowing me too well. "But I'm afraid," I admitted. "Not just of him or what he might expect, but of myself, of what I might become in his world." Jenny was silent for a moment, watching Liam as he triumphantly climbed to the top of the slide. "You know I've never been his biggest fan," she finally said. "The whole situation scares me, but I've seen the changes in you these past weeks." "Changes?" I glanced at her, surprised. "You stand straighter. You laugh more easily. There's a confidence in you I haven't seen since before Michael left." She squeezed my hand. "Whatever this man brings into your life, it's not all bad." Before I could respond, Liam let out a delighted squeal as he zoomed down the slide. I clapped and called encouragement, momentarily distracted from our conversation. When I looked back at Jenny, her expression had changed, eyes widening as she stared at something over my shoulder. I turned to follow her gaze and felt my heart stutter. Dominic stood at the edge of the playground, looking distinctly out of place in his impeccable suit among the casual weekend attire of other parents. Russo was nowhere to be seen, though I suspected he wasn't far. "That's him?" Jenny whispered. I nodded, watching as Dominic approached, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Sophia," he greeted me, then nodded politely to Jenny. "You must be the sister. Elena mentioned you." Jenny straightened, protective instincts visibly kicking in. "And you're the man who's turned my sister's life upside down." A hint of amusement touched his eyes. "That's one perspective. Why are you here?" I asked, scanning the playground for Liam. He was now in the sandbox, happily filling a bucket with determined focus. "We need to talk," Dominic said. "Privately." Jenny started to protest, but I squeezed her hand. "It's okay. Can you watch Liam for a few minutes?" She nodded reluctantly. "I'll be right here if you need me." I followed Dominic to a spot several yards away, still within sight of the playground but out of earshot. The spring sunshine fell across his face, softening his features in a way the dim restaurant lighting never did. "This is unexpected," I said, crossing my arms defensively. "Circumstances changed," he replied. "I wouldn't have come if it wasn't important." Something in his tone sent a ripple of alarm through me. "What's happened?" "There's been a threat," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Not directly against you or Liam, but against those in my circle." Elena was right to be concerned. My gaze immediately shot to Liam, peacefully playing in the sandbox. "What kind of threat?" "The kind I take very seriously." His jaw tightened. "I'm handling it, but I need you to make a decision, Sophia. Now, not next week." "That's not fair," I protested. "You can't just show up and demand." "This isn't about fair," he interrupted. "It's about safety. Yours and Liam's." Are you threatening us? I demanded, anger flaring. I'm trying to protect you, he countered, frustration evident in his voice. But I can't do that effectively unless you're fully under my protection. As your employee, you mean? His expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through his usual composure. As whatever you want to be, Sophia. But close to me, where I can ensure your safety. The implications of his words hung between us, heavy with meaning neither of us had openly acknowledged until now. And if I say no, I asked quietly. Then I'll respect your decision, he said after a moment. I'll provide security for you and Liam as best I can from a distance. But it won't be the same. I looked back at the playground, at my son happily oblivious to the life-altering conversation happening just yards away. I need to think about this. Today? Not next week? But at least today. Dominic nodded, his relief visible. Tonight. I'll send Anton for you at 8. He paused, then added, Bring Liam if you need to. My home is secure. The mention of his home, a place I'd never seen, never even heard him discuss, underscored the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about a job offer anymore. Okay, I agreed, tonight. As he turned to leave, I caught his arm. Dominic, is Liam truly in danger? His eyes met mine, dark and serious. Everyone I care about is at risk right now. But I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone touch your son. You have my word. The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it settled something within me, a piece clicking into place that I hadn't realized was missing. When I returned to Jenny and Liam, my sister took one look at my face and sighed. You've made your decision, haven't you? I think I made it weeks ago, I admitted. I just wasn't ready to acknowledge it. That evening, after putting Liam to bed in his room at our new apartment, I sat with Jenny in the living room, waiting for Anton to arrive. Are you sure about this? She asked for the third time. Once you step into his world fully, I'm not sure you can ever truly step out again. I'm not sure about anything, I admitted, except that when I'm with him, I feel seen, like he understands parts of me that I've kept hidden from everyone else. Jenny's expression softened. You're falling in love with him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I think I might already be there. The admission was terrifying and liberating at once. Is that crazy? Probably, she said with a sad smile. But when has love ever been sane? At precisely 8 o'clock, a text arrived from an unknown number. Downstairs. I hugged Jenny tightly. You'll stay with Liam? I don't want to wake him. Of course, just be careful, Soph. And call me if you need anything, anytime. The ride to Dominic's home was silent. Anton's usual stoicism in full force. We drove out of the city, up winding roads into the hills, eventually passing through a gate and up a long driveway to a modern mansion nestled against the mountainside. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city below, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Anton led me inside without a word, through an expansive living area with minimalist furnishings, to a terrace where Dominic waited. He stood with his back to me, gazing out at the view, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. Thank you for coming, he said without turning. Your message didn't leave much room for refusal, I replied, moving to stand beside him at the railing. He glanced at me then, his expression softening. Liam? Asleep at home. Jenny's with him. Dominic nodded, offering me the glass in his hand. I took it, our fingers brushing in the exchange, that now familiar electricity sparking between us. This is quite a place, I said, taking a sip of what turned out to be excellent scotch. Not what I expected. What did you expect? A fortress? Underground bunker? A hint of amusement colored his tone. Something less beautiful, I admitted. Beauty matters, he said simply, especially when much of life is ugly. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, the night air cool against my skin. The city spread before us like a glittering tapestry. Tell me about this threat, I finally said. Dominic turned to face me fully. A rival organization. They've made moves against several of my businesses in the past month. Yesterday they targeted someone close to me. A cousin. He'll recover, but the message was clear. that they can get to anyone you care about. I finished for him. Yes. His gaze was intense, unwavering. That's why I need you to decide. Not just about the job, but about us. What you want this to be. My heart hammered in my chest. What do you want it to be? More, he said simply. I want you in my life, Sophia. Not just as an employee, not just as someone I protect, as a partner. As mine. The possessiveness in that final word should have repelled me. Instead, it ignited something primal and longing. And Liam? Would be as much mine to protect as he is yours, Dominic said without hesitation. I would never try to replace his father, but I would be whatever he needs me to be. I set the glass down on the railing, turning to face him fully. It's dangerous being yours, yes, he acknowledged. I won't lie about that. And complicated. Your world is so far from anything I understand. You understand more than you think. He moved closer, not touching me yet, but near enough that I could feel the heat of his body. You see people clearly, Sophia. You always have. It's what drew me to you from the beginning. Not my sparkling personality or stunning beauty, I joked weakly. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Those didn't hurt. I took a deep breath, the biggest question still unasked. Do you love me, Dominic? Or am I just someone you want to possess? He didn't answer immediately, seeming to weigh his words carefully. I've never said those words to anyone outside my family, he finally said. They're not words I use lightly. My heart sank a little, though I kept my expression neutral. But, he continued, reaching up to touch my face gently, when I think of you not in my life, when I imagine you walking away, there's an emptiness I can't bear. If that's love, then yes. I love you, Sophia. The confession, halting and imperfect as it was, broke something open inside me. I closed the distance between us, my lips finding his in a kiss that had been building for months. His arms encircled me immediately, pulling me against him with a hunger that matched my own. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I rested my forehead against his. Yes, I whispered. To all of it. The job, being yours, everything, but I have conditions. A smile touched his lips. I would expect nothing less. Liam comes first, always. His safety, his happiness, his future. Agreed, he said without hesitation. Jenny stays in our lives. She's the only family we have. Of course. And I hesitated, then plunged ahead. I need to know what you do. Not every detail, but enough to understand the world I'm entering. No more shadows and half-truths. Dominic was silent for a long moment, considering. That puts you at risk. I'm already at risk, I countered. Knowledge is protection too. Finally, he nodded. Agreed. Starting tomorrow, I'll show you everything you need to know. And tonight? I asked, suddenly aware of how alone we were, how close his bedroom likely was. His eyes darkened. Tonight is about us, just us. As his lips found mine again, more demanding this time, I surrendered to the feeling I'd been fighting for so long. This man, dangerous, powerful, complicated, had somehow become essential to me, to us. I didn't know what the future held, what challenges we would face as my world merged with his. There would be danger, yes. Difficult choices. Moments when I would question everything. But as Dominic led me inside, his hand warm and sure in mine, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was no longer alone in facing whatever came next. For the first time since becoming a mother, I had found someone who would stand beside me, who saw me fully and wanted me anyway. For Liam, for myself, I had found a new beginning in the most unlikely place, in the arms of a man the world feared, but who had shown me nothing but protection and care. And for now, that was enough.